don't really start until the fiscal year 25-26 timeframe, because that was the first year we had it within our new adopted Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Another program I would like to highlight is our off-system construction program. This is going to use some of those other federal funds and look to assist the local governments with some of those larger projects that have been kind of log jammed on our priority list for years because of our funding policies and having a $4 million cap. This does not have the cap that our TMA policies have, but it does require the local governments to perform the PD&E design and right-of-way phases, and then this program will help assist with that construction. Next slide, please. So based on the updated rankings, largely remain the same with just some movement based on the new weighting and emphasis in vulnerable road users. What we saw kind of anecdotally is that a lot of the complete streets and safety projects really started moving up because those are our hotspots, especially with safety as a higher weight and pedestrian vulnerability. But as you can see, just some projects moved up and down 1 to 2 positions, and our final list that was submitted has all the rankings and where they started moving up and down. But still our #1 projects with 1792, 535, and State Road 434 really starting to advance into the tip. Next slide, please. The off-system construction assistance projects, we received 6 projects from our local government partners. This window is still open. Like I said, it needs to, the program requires a commitment from our local governments for the initial phases of PD&E design and right-of-way. But once that commitment has been demonstrated, you can submit that project to MetroPlan and we can start adding it to our list for evaluation to get into the Transportation Improvement Program. Right now, we have Old Lake Wilson Road and Canoe Creek as our top projects that we will look to advance through that program. Next slide, please. The TSMO and ITS improvements, like I said, the signal retiming and the regional TSMO program are always at the top of our list, but these are the top ranked projects that will be moving forward, trying to enter into the next tip as we work through this next year. Looking at Pine Street, and again, Canoe Creek is rising to the top of the list with Rosemont and Robinson, also with some operational improvements. Next slide, please. Our Complete Streets program, again, didn't move too much because a lot of the emphasis was going towards supporting those complete streets itself. Still have Warren Ave and Central at the top of the list, and the others moved around slightly based on the new weighting. Next slide, please. And then our regional trails didn't change at all with the weighting emphasis or vulnerable pedestrian, because these are all off-system trails and not really linked to roadway crash or safety, as well as reliability and other metrics. So these have been our top priorities, and we'll continue to try to advance them into the Transportation Improvement Program. Next slide, please. And then our transit capital projects, starting at the top, is supporting links with their transit asset management and their other capital expenses. We still have as our top premium corridor that connection to OIA from Meadowwoods for Sunrail. But #3 and #4 are critically important for links to expand their system and to continue to support our region. So those are priorities that we're trying to advance to help support that transit element of our plan. Next slide, please. So those are the updated rankings based on what I presented last month to this month, using now a new weighting and emphasis on pedestrian and vulnerable users. Our next step is we'll be taking this to the board on the 7th to receive action, and then ultimately submit the prioritized project list for that national highway and state road, and as well as our programming list for those TMA funds to the Department of Transportation soon after the 7th. So with that, I will see if there are any questions that I can answer, but I'm looking for your support.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us and coming back. Do we have any questions? Shad, I see your hand. You are recognized.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I was looking at this online data viewer. Is that how this list is all based off of? Is that correct?
Correct. Those are all the performance metrics actually for every segment within our network. But then those metrics are applied to just the projects identified as cost feasible in the first 10 years of our plan.
I noticed there's a lot of these that the like AADT is not correct at all, not even close. So as I was going through it, especially the non-DOT roads, they're all over the place, not right. I mean, it might be 5,000-6,000 off, and for a 6,000 ADT road, that's a lot. It's double. So I haven't gone through any of the other crash numbers or anything yet, but I was just kind of curious where that was filled out from.
Yeah, actually the AADT is all one source instead of cobbling together the multiple sources. It's all using our streetlight data. So it's consistent and relative based on the volumes across all of our network, but we can take a look at that. And that's why we sent this out to all of our committees, because this is new metrics. We're using data and a bunch of different data sources. So if we are seeing these discrepancies, that's what we'd like to know as we're putting this program or prioritized project list together over the next couple of years. So thanks for calling that out, and we'll take a look at the volumes.
Okay, yeah, I'll go through and I'll put together a little list and I'll send them to you just so you know what the ones I looked at. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Nabil, I see your hand is raised. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Nick, what is the purpose of looking only at the first 10 years of the Metropolitan Plan? Is that for just to keep the plan dynamic pretty much, or is there other purpose for that?
Well, so in theory, for our plan itself, when we adopted it, we had 4 different scenarios, and we used kind of a high growth scenario, mimicking kind of the disruption dilemmas that we had going on with the pandemic, a medium growth, and then the trend. So our cost feasible plan was established by trying to determine those projects in the first 5 years and 10 years that had the highest probability of meeting those multiple future scenarios. So that's one kind of component of our plan of why the first 10 years, because we have the higher probability that those will still make sense 5 years down the road as we're still trying to program them into our improvement program. But the second part of that is the requirement that came down from the federal government that part of the rulemaking, instead of having the 20 years available to go into the transportation improvement program, they wanted to make the year of expenditure component of their cost feasible plan a little bit more valid. So the first 10 years, which you've established as cost feasible, are eligible to move into the TIP. After that, though, we have established them as cost feasible in 35 through 45, but they are kind of more illustrative, as we all know that revenues and those assumptions out more than 10 years start changing.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Brian Sanders, I see your hand. You're recognized.
Hey, Nick, can you update us on the equity issue?
So right now there is no equity distribution within this. This is a regional weighting based on the goals itself. The equity component that we have discussed during the technical advisory committee, we still need to bring up to the board and see if they want to decide that prioritization process going into the next round.
Does that answer your question, Brian, or do you have follow-up?
Thanks for the update. Just curious of the timing or projected timing of that discussion.
Yeah, when we were having our workshop, it was too soon to change our prioritization process that we established. So now that we have kind of the full year and we're going to start our tracking the trends and discussing that process, now we can start bringing it up earlier so it's not coming up at this point next year.
Thanks.
No problem.
Other discussion or questions? Raise hands, please. Not seeing any. Mr. Lepp did ask us if we have consensus. So unless I see a hand, we will move forward. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is a request for volunteers for a pedestrian safety Working Group. Mr. Mike Wilson from MetroPlan Orlando will present the information. Like before, please hold off your questions until the presentation is finished. Mr. Wilson, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. As you will recall, in prior meetings, we had discussion about, particularly from the TAC, development of some sort of working group to address not only pedestrian safety, but where we really broadened it out to vulnerable users more generally. And we've, of course, got the support of the board on this, with this being a major concern. So what we're looking for this morning, very simply, is volunteers, one from each county or the jurisdictions within those counties, to participate in the working group. What we'll be doing is, planning, developing, planning and program strategies to improve safety for those users, with a special emphasis on corridor speeds and how we can manage those more effectively. That's really all I've got this morning. As far as the nature of the meetings, I expect we'll probably start off on a monthly basis and see if we need to go to a quarterly. As for timing, we'll poll the group when we get everybody together to see what's going to be a most manageable day and time to make that happen. And with that, just bring it back to you, Mr. Chairman, for cobbling together our volunteers for the TSMO.
Let me start by asking if there's questions, and then we'll ask for volunteers after the questions. So if there are questions, hands, please. Cade, you are recognized.
Mike, are you looking for multiple representatives from each county, or one representative for each county?
Just one from each. We want to, keep this group of a manageable size by having 3 from each of the committees, plus 1 from Links, 1 from FDOT, 1 from the TDLCB, Transportation Disadvantage, and Best Foot Forward. That gives us 13 members, which I think is a manageable size. And so keep in mind that we'll also be volunteers from the TAC. So, so more opportunities obviously there. So.
Any other questions? Raise hands. And now the moment we're all waiting for. Hands for volunteers, please. I see Brian Sanders, Kelly Brock, Cade, Kathy Lee.
I have a recommendation. This is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
I take this opportunity when I can, when Hazem is not in attendance. I'm volunteering Hazem or his designee, likely Lauren Torres from his group, to participate.
Mike Wilson, do you have what you would need here, or would you like further?
Sorry, I muted myself. So we are looking at Kelly Brock, I'm assuming for Seminole County.
Thank you, Kelly.
Hazem for Orange, and then is Kathy Lee our Seminole County?
Osceola County.
Osceola County,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, Osceola.
All right. All right.
All right, thank you. As we are in workshop and this is volunteers, we do not need an action. So thank you very much for your volunteering. We have one presentation listed on today's agenda. Please use
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Nabil has his hand raised. Nabil?
Just a quick comment, Mr. Chairman. Does Mike would like to designate backups for these volunteers? Typically, there may or may not be available all the time. I don't know if you don't want to leave that just open or just designate an actual alternate designee. That's all.
We do have backup committee members for each member. I don't know if we want to use those or have a separate. What is the pleasure of the group?
Well, if I could suggest, I mean, typically, a backup coming from the same jurisdiction is most useful because those are
Yeah.
typically, that way you don't have sunshine issues, and then also, and just more typically in routine communication. So.
Mr. Chairman, I think your suggestion of using the alternate, the volunteer's alternate as a backup would probably be suitable.
And since we're on a volunteer basis, if we have an issue, we can always come back and ask for another volunteer. Okay, thank you, Nabil.
Thank you.
We do have the one presentation on our agenda. Please use the raise hands function to be recognized if you'd like to ask a question. You can raise it anytime during the presentation, but we'll hold off until the end for the questions. Ms. Laura Bauk of MetroPlan Orlando staff will give our presentation on MetroPlan Orlando's fiscal year 2019 to 20 signal retiming project. Laura, you're recognized. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, committee members. I am here this morning to give you a brief presentation on the findings from our fiscal year 2019-2020 signal retiming, travel time, and delay study. This is a study that we complete annually to assess the value of our signal retiming program, where we go in and collect before and after peak hour travel time, speed and delay data, and then we perform benefit cost analysis. Next slide, please. I think most of you are familiar with our retiming program, but for the uninitiated, I'll just do a brief bit of background. This is the 14th consecutive year that MetroPlan Orlando has funded the retiming and coordination of traffic signals in the region. Each year we work with you, our agency partners, to identify which signals need to be retimed, and then new timing plans are implemented for each of the selected signals. We use this as a technology solution that allows us to increase traffic flow, mitigate congestion, account for changes in traffic patterns, reduce delay, and also improve our air quality and safety. We also use it as a means of providing opportunities to periodically examine our intersection operations and corridor progression and identify related maintenance issues, particularly with the signal control equipment. For our 2019-2020 retiming program, that included retiming signals on 30 corridor segments and at 17 independent intersections throughout the region. We also looked at timing for signals at 14 school intersections, and those were adjusted for the school pickup and drop-off time period. Next slide, please. So just a few slides showing you where the projects were for fiscal year 19-20 program. These are the 4 projects that were retimed in Osceola County. Next slide, please. We had the bulk of our retiming projects in Orange County, and as you can see, quite a few of those were at intersections or school intersections. Next slide, please. And then finally, these are the projects that were retimed in Seminole County. Next slide, please. So taking a look at some of our findings. For the corridor travel time results, we usually look at end-to-end travel times as the goal that our agencies are looking to achieve, reducing that travel time. And so for 28 of the 30 corridor segments that were retimed, we had shorter travel times on those, as well as 93%, or again, 28 of the 30 corridors had reliable travel times as compared to 80%, or 24 of the corridors before the retiming. And as we all know, when we talk about reliable travel times, we're looking at expecting our travel time to be the same on that roadway segment most of the time. Next slide, please. For the intersection delay results, at 15 of the 17 intersections, or 88%, we saw less intersection delay during the peak period after the retiming. And then at our 14 school intersections, 57%, or 8 of those 14 intersections, had reduced delay during the pickup and drop-off periods. Next slide, please. This slide just shows some quick statistics on the overall 2019-2020 retiming program. That year's program resulted in an annual time savings of well over 500,000 hours, vehicle hours, and that results in a 3-year benefit of more than $27 million if you assume a little over $18 an hour in reduced travel time. The total project cost for retimings for that program year was $1.3 million, and that gave us an overall benefit cost ratio of nearly 22. This high BC ratio indicates that our retiming program continues to remain an effective program for MetroPlan Orlando to invest in. And to that point, next slide. This slide shows our historic BC ratios since 2010. As you can see, when we were sort of in the early years of the program, we were getting very high BC ratios that started to fall. And over that 2017-2018 period, we were starting to wonder if maybe we had reached sort of the limits of efficiency that we could get with retiming our signals, but we're starting to see that rise. And I think that's a testament to the fact that there are always corridors that we can look at to improve efficiency, and that this is still a good program for us to be funding. Next slide, please. Looking at some of our other benefits, we were also able to reducing driver delay results in reducing fuel usage and reducing vehicle emissions as well. And for the fiscal year 2019-2020 program, we saw 471,000 gallons of fuel saved, and we reduced our vehicle carbon dioxide emissions by 4,600 tons annually. Next slide, please. I just wanted to end by talking a little bit about signal timing and safety, which has come up in some of my presentations earlier this year already. Historically, our signal retiming is looking at providing the opportunity to review our signal timing clearance intervals and pedestrian timing, and adjusting to current best practices as needed. Maintaining our coordination along corridors also reduces vehicle diversion and increases platooning, which we see benefits road users that are also crossing the main corridors and or turning onto the corridor from side streets. In recent years, there's been increased focus from MetroPlan Orlando, as well as our agency partners, on how signal retiming can provide some additional safety benefits. And so we're increasingly looking at signal timing treatments like leading pedestrian intervals, no right turn on red, protected left turns, and reduced cycle lengths as a way to increase safety for our pedestrians, bicyclists, and also drivers, of course. Next slide, please. And that's all I have for you today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If we have any questions or any discussion, please raise hands. Mr. Brock, you are recognized.
I was curious, was this done during COVID, or do you think there were COVID impacts because of lower traffic volumes? Is that a factor, or did y'all speculate?
That is a good question. So there were some lower traffic volumes, and part of this work was done in terms of the data collection was done before COVID, and some of it was after COVID. I will say that by the time that we resumed the traffic retiming program, which went on hold in April of last year, or sorry, March of last year, and then we resumed again in September of this year. By the time that we resumed, traffic volumes were back up to close enough to normal that all of our maintaining agencies were sort of comfortable with proceeding with the retimings. And so there's a possibility that there may have been some impact with the volumes, but I don't think a major one.
Other questions or discussion? Brett, you are recognized.
Just want to thank Laura. Very good presentation, very good graphics, and I always think this is one of the success stories that we should continue to put out to the public from this committee. So just good job, good graphics.
Thank you, Brett.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Hill.
This is not a question, but while we have Laura center stage, I want to just announce that Laura has been selected to participate in the TSMO Academy. This is the premier institute for TSMO representatives around the country. It's funded by Federal Highway Administration, ITS America, ITE, as well as ASTO, for creating a cadre of TSMO experts to advance TSMO. And with her selection this year, she received a scholarship to attend. She joins an elite group of TSMO representatives from Central Florida, including Jeremy Dillmore, John Moore from FDOT, Dave Mulholland from VHB, Alex Laffey 2 years ago from Osceola County, and yours truly. So congratulations, Laura.
Thank you, Eric. Full indoctrination. Yes.
Congratulations, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for the presentation. If you have really enjoyed it, you can watch it again at TAC. Speaking of which, in our common presentations, you will see that we have two: the presentation on the fiscal year 2019 through 2020 signal timing that we just saw, and also the status report on the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project. I believe that the chairman of TAC has graciously agreed to reverse those two, so that if you are only on this committee, you can go ahead and see the I-4 and then sign out. There is some additional information under the General Information tab in tab 5 of your agendas. We also have two meetings coming up of interest to this committee. One is our next TSMO meeting, which is August 27th. As we have previously heard, this will be in person, so please make sure that you RSVP when requested. Also, the next MetroPlan Orlando board meeting will be July 7th. This will also be a hybrid meeting with the board members in person, and then members of the public able to come in via the Zoom. I'd like to now ask if we have any member comments or updates. If so, please use raise hands. Connie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just wanted to let everyone know I've been sitting in for the last couple months for Alex Laffey. And I just wanted all the members to know that Alex has been in the hospital for a pretty major incident with his health, but he is getting out of the hospital next week. I'm not sure he's going to go through some significant rehab, but I've been conversing with Eric, and I asked Eric if he could, send a card over to the hospital. So I just wanted the TSMO committee members to know and just to keep him in your thoughts. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the update, and please communicate back that he very much is in our thoughts.
Thank you.
Any other member comments or updates? And not seeing any, this brings us to our public comments. If any members of the public wish to comment, please raise your hands and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We will unmute your mic. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes or less. Are there any comments at this time? I am not seeing any. Eric, are you seeing any?
Nope.
And any written or phone comments submitted before the meeting, Eric?
None.
Having none, I would thank you all for attending. And again, thank you for through our little glitch that we had this morning and coming back. So at this time, with no further business, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Goodbye. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.